Hi, I'm Neal Schaffer from PDCA Social, and you are listening to the Social Media Talks podcast with Alan Hennessy from compassmedia.ie.
Hi there. Before we begin this episode, we'd like to give a big shout out to our sponsors and also our supporters. The Social Media Talks podcast is sponsored by ContentCal, creating a solution to simplify and speed up how teams can plan, collaborate on, approve, publish and analyze social media content in a familiar and intuitive calendar interface. In just 3 years, they have been trusted by over 10,000 businesses and agencies in 110 countries to deliver social media content at scale, and have recently won an award for the Content Management Tool of the Year. For more information on ContentCal, visit their website at contentcal.io. We would also like to remind you the Social Media Talks podcast is proudly supported by charityradio.ie, one of Ireland's leading online radio stations supporting charities across Ireland for free. And now, this week's episode.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneurs on Fire, and you are listening to the Social Media Talks podcast with Alan Hennessy from Compass Media. This is the podcast to help business owners who want to learn more about digital and social media marketing. You are prepared to ignite.
Welcome to Social Media Talks podcasts, brought to you by compassmedia.ie.
Hello and thank you for joining me. This is the Social Media Talks podcast brought to you by compassmedia.ie, episode number 70. I'm your host Alan Hennessy, and this is the podcast to help business owners who want to learn more about social media marketing. And if you'd like to listen to any of our previous podcasts, you can log on to our website at compassmedia.ie/podcasts. You can also join our Facebook group by logging on to facebook.com/groups/social media talks. You can also join us on a Monday night for our Social Media Talk show live on Facebook every Monday night from 8:30 with my co-host Trevor Lorkins, the Digital Alchemist, where we talk all about digital marketing and so much more as well. We cover a lot of topics on the program. So that's every Monday night from 8:30 GMT on the Social Media Talks page. And we're looking forward to today's show. Today I'm going to be joined by Neal Schaffer. And Neal is a leading authority on helping businesses through their digital transformation of sales and marketing through consulting, training and helping enterprises, large and small, develop and execute on social media marketing strategy, influencer marketing and social selling initiatives. Neal is the president of the social media agency PDCA Social, and Neal also teaches digital media to executives at Reuters University and the Irish Management Institute, and is an executive advisor for the Digital Marketing Institute here in Ireland. He is fluent in Japanese and Mandarin Chinese, and Neal is a popular social media speaker and has been invited to speak about digital media on 4 different continents in a dozen countries. He is also the author of 3 books on social media, including Maximizing Your Social, and in the winter of 2019 he will publish his 4th book, The Business of Influence, on educating the market on why and how every business should leverage the potential of influencer marketing. Neal has also been recognized as a Forbes Top 50 Social Media Power Influencer, as well as a Top 5 Social Media Sales Influencer. And today we are going to be talking to Neal all about influencer marketing. So I'm looking forward to the podcast this afternoon. So without further ado, I think we will transition straight over to the interview with Neal. Hi Neal, how are you? Thanks for joining us today on the Social Media Talks podcast. It's a pleasure to have your company.
Oh, well, thank you very much for the invitation. It's an honor to be here.
And of course, before we start and we get stuck into our chosen topic today, which is influencer marketing, which I'm looking forward to chatting to you all about. Maybe you could give us, I know everyone knows about you. I suppose a brief background on yourself before we get stuck into the chosen topic.
Sure. Well, my name is Neal Schaffer. I am very active in social media. Obviously, I do social media for a living. I help businesses, large and small, in a variety of ways, consulting, speaking, training. I have my own social media agency as well. I blog, I podcast, I've written a few books. Yeah. I consider myself an educator more than anything else, and really about helping businesses, even when I consult, even when I'm an agency, of helping them become what's best for their own brand, for their own company. So it's always a pleasure to be on podcasts like these where I can help a lot of people through the process of just having this 30-minute conversation.
Brilliant stuff, and quite a large portfolio there, I suppose, at the end of the day. So you've done quite a lot, and of course, we all know you as well from LinkedIn as well, who are a bit of an expert. And I have to admit, I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to LinkedIn. I do love it. It's probably one of my favorite social platforms, as people will know who listen to this podcast as well. But today we're going to be talking all about influencer marketing, and I think I think especially when it comes to influencer marketing, I think it's very, very interesting that, a lot of people don't realize the potential of influencer marketing and how it can actually help, I suppose, your business and get you more eyeballs, I suppose, on your content as much as anything else.
Yeah, I think influencer marketing challenges marketers, challenges social media marketers, because when, it's been a decade now, right? And I've been in business for 9 years now. So social media obviously is nothing new. It's very mainstream, but it took a long time for marketers to finally put together a system, an operations, a process. So, okay, we create content, we publish content, and then they realized, well, organic content alone is not going to do us well. We need to actually pay to get more eyeballs for our content. So I think that marketers have become very complacent in this. Okay, we publish organic content. Maybe we supplement that with curated content. We do advertising. Often, if they think they need to do more, it's with different content mediums. And I would add that they probably should do more, because social media just becomes more and more visual with every day. And point in case LinkedIn adding live stream video to the GIFs and stickers and all the other Facebooky type stuff that they have. So, visual is important for every platform. And that's why every year you look at these social media predictions and video and live stream and what have you. Influencer marketing just is a very, very different approach that I think most brands have only thought of from a campaign perspective. Oh, we're going to launch a new product. Let's have an influencer component to that launch or to that campaign. My view of influencer marketing, and I think that marketers have really become miseducated about what influencer marketing means, because the knee-jerk reaction is that influencer marketing is about, women with 1 million followers on Instagram who post something about fashion or makeup, and they make $10,000 a post and what have you. And there are, that is a part of influencer marketing, but if we take a step back, we need to realize that I think the golden age of social media marketing is sort of coming to an end, because organic reach is getting close to zero for many brands on many platforms. And this is because social media was made for people, not for businesses. And at some point, for social networks to survive, they need more advertising revenue. But they also need to make sure that they provide them content, or they provide social media users like me and you content, so that we keep coming back to the news feed morning in and morning out. And it's a reminder for those of you that have ever had a chance to visit Facebook headquarters. Whether you had a chance to go in or not is another story. But if you go to One Hacker Way there in the Bay Area, you'll see that there's this iconic Facebook like button sign that greets employees as they go in. What you may not notice is if you go to the back of that sign, you'll see the old Sun Microsystems sign, because they took over the old Sun Microsystems campus. Obviously, Sun Microsystems became a dinosaur, no longer in business. And that's the whole point, is that social networks do not want to become the MySpaces. They want to make sure that the content is relevant to you and that you don't see it as just blatant advertising. And that's why, there has to be a balance of organic content coming from your friends with advertisements sprinkled here and there, which means there's really not much place for organic content from business pages, right? And that's reality. And every time there's a new stat about engagement reach on Facebook is now less than 0.01%. The writing's on the wall, everybody. And there are platforms like Instagram where that may not be the case yet, but it's really supply demand. The more people that use it, the more people that publish content, the more that we follow our friends and build connections, the more we're going to see content from people than from businesses. So that's sort of the reality. It's going to be harder to generate ROI from organic social. So that's why social media really has become, for lack of a better word, for most businesses, pay to play. So if you're going to pay for that privilege, there's another way of looking at advertising, right? And that's in working together with people. And when we work together with people, instead of just giving money to the advertising platforms, it becomes very, very different. Businesses that begin with influencer marketing still treat people like they're programmable advertising units. But obviously, people have compelling power in the algorithms, right? If it's becoming pay to play for businesses, on the flip side, people get tremendous organic reach and engagement on the networks. And this is where, if I was to work with a B2B company on LinkedIn, just working with one or two employees might get you exponentially greater reach for your content than if you were to publish that same content from your company page, which gets very little engagement. Although I will say, from working with brands recently, I think that LinkedIn company page engagement is actually a little bit higher than Facebook page engagement, which I would have assumed would be the other way around. But I digress there. But needless to say, when you work with people who get great reach organically, there's tremendous potential. But it's not just the potential to reach other people, but to really collaborate, right? And that collaboration can take a lot of different forms. So that's where there's this historical trend towards working together with people. And there's the fact that when you work together with people, that there can be tremendous benefits other than those things that marketers were traditionally going after. So this is sort of the background. Anyone that's ever seen me speak or teach or what have you, or read one of my books, we need to begin with the background so that we can best leverage the potential. And therefore, it begins with sort of this re-education of, what influencer marketing is and what it isn't. And I can go further on the subject, but does all that make sense? You represent your listeners, and I want to make sure that I'm not talking at a different,
I think in what you're saying, there's so much, and I always say it goes back to, common sense, really. People buy from people, and people talk to people, and they don't talk to machines. They use machines. They use social media to get their message out, or they use social media to find out information. But I think as much as anything else is when we're doing that, I think we also have to remember that these, I have this saying where I always say, at the end of every computer, there is a person. And it is true. And if we can connect with them and we can leverage as other people's audiences, it adds so much value. And just one of the points that you touched on there about employees and stuff like that, I know you've wrote extensively about employee advocacy, and I myself, I have wrote about it as well, where I actually was saying, not enough businesses actually do that, is where they actually, they use their employees. And I don't mean use and as in use and abuse them. I mean as in that they don't leverage their content or their audiences, because, for every employee that you have, they have at least 100 friends, whether it be on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever it may be. So, and I think they're missing a trick. A lot of businesses miss that trick, and they don't educate them, and they don't help them to promote their own brands. And, because most people, I know if I worked in a business, I would be very happy to, if my company's doing something that's really good, or is good for the community, or is good for our business, is to give it a little bit of a plug on my social media. And I think that's where influencer marketing, I think as well as that with people and business owners, they think that influencer marketing, as you said, is the people that have 10,000 followers, and they have to do, they have to pay this a huge amount of money to get them to promote their products. When in actual fact, an influencer can be your next door neighbor.
Absolutely.
I think, I just think it's so true that, and we don't realize that I've listened to a number of speakers talking about influencer marketing, and the way they talk about it is that it doesn't necessarily have to be quantity of these people, of these users. It's about, do they, resonate with what you're doing? Which I think is a very important point.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the funny thing is, I do a lot of business in Asia. I speak fluent Japanese. I speak Mandarin Chinese as well. And when I go to Asia, Japan is a country where you would think they're really advanced in this, but they're actually really, really far behind in terms of digital and social media marketing in general, especially when it comes to B2B. But when I talk about influencer marketing, I go, hey, how did your business get to be where it is today? And every business owner or those that know the history of their company will say it all started with word of mouth marketing. It all started with someone used our product, they told other people, and really was word of mouth marketing. So when I speak to these people, these are organizations that might not even be doing social media marketing, but they get influencer marketing and they see the ROI immediately, and they go, that makes sense, right? It makes sense to use social media more for that purpose, to accelerate or to incite word of mouth marketing, than to do this traditional form of social media marketing that is very, very prevalent here in North America and in Europe, by the way. So, it's almost like I compare it with Chinese society that say, we don't have to build fixed phone infrastructure if we never had it. We'll just go straight to wireless. And you see this throughout a lot of the developing countries as well. A similar approach I see in Asia, where companies don't even really do organic social media marketing, and they only do influencer marketing. They leapfrog past all the legacy that all these companies have in organic social media marketing and just strictly work with influencers. In fact, I mentioned this in social media marketing world just a few weeks ago, but there was a pretty famous consumer brand that was coming out with a new line of a female, makeup products in the Asian market. And they were saying, well, if we don't work with influencers, how else are we going to get the word out about our product? And I think that's sort of what social media has become today. So we can play the violins and cry about the declining reach, or we can celebrate the people that have reach. And you're right. It's we don't want to define, and there are definitions as to, well, how many followers should you have? That is not the important thing. The important thing right now is understanding the concept that other people can be of help to you. And really, I mean, I would agree with you. And I'm about to do a webinar where, and I mentioned this recently. I mentioned it for the first time in August when I spoke in Denmark at the Falcon.io conference there in Copenhagen. But I said, let's just get rid of the word employee advocacy, because employee advocacy should be part of influencer marketing. And the reason that most brands struggle when they do have an employee advocacy program is they treat their employees as advertising units, right? When you treat your employees as influencers, right, in the same light, you can create a completely different paradigm. It's a complete paradigm shift that I hope that more and more marketers listen to the message. And I know that a lot of the employee advocacy platforms out there are starting to say the same thing, right? Treat employees as influencers, make your employees more influential. And, part of doing that is it comes down to the education, right? The training. And that's why I find that successful programs are actually training their employees to become more influential in their communities, and it becomes an absolute win-win. So, the influencer can be anyone and everyone, someone from a few hundred followers to someone with obviously a lot more than that. But, don't go and work with someone you don't know. Begin with the people that you do know. And that's first and foremost your employees. Obviously, if you're a B2B company and you have sort of ecosystem partners and distributors that you work with. Those are obvious, they're not employees per se, but they have a relationship with your company where the better they do, the better you do. So there's an immediate relationship that can be leveraged there, especially when it's beneficial for both parties. So that's really where we begin this new sort of era of, let's start collaborating instead of trying to sell to people, which is still our end objective. Let's do it through collaboration. And when you collaborate, this podcast is an example of influencer marketing for many people, many businesses. We reach out to influencers, we have them on a podcast in hopes that they're going to share this with their community. And why wouldn't they, right? And it's a classic example. And that's why I say, when you want to begin this long road down influencer marketing, begin from content, because it's really the easiest way to start. It really begins with content curation, which we would call in sort of the B2B Twitter, LinkedIn world. In the consumer facing world, they call this, leveraging user generated content, but it's really the same thing, right? But it's not just blindly curating content, it's actually curating the content of those that you want to build a relationship with. And you begin to have a more strategic approach to that content curation, or leveraging other people's photos on Instagram and reposting, what have you. So that's really a good first step in beginning this relationship that with many people, that I think is really going to help your brand in the future.
Yeah, and I think I would totally agree. And like, Eve, as you say there about the podcast, that has helped so much with this podcast, because I know, like, from the people that we've had on, we automatically will say, if you want to share the content, and I would never ever say to them, oh, you make sure you share this out, because at the end of the day, that's not the way you do things. You wouldn't do it in real life, so why would you do it, digitally? And this is, as like I spoke with, he's not your brother, but he is your namesake, Mark Schaffer, and we were talking about that, and I was saying, it's about building trust, and it's also about collaborations, and it's about pulling together and helping each other, because I think that helps. And when you start to do that, like, I know with the podcast, every time the podcast goes, I have a number of people who have been on our podcast here, and that they would actually, this is another great podcast from the Social Media Talks, and they share it out to their community. And I think that is a huge influence. And I always say it, like, the amount after every podcast, I usually get between 20 and 30 more people that will follow me on social media.
I always say, I shouldn't say always say, because this is always evolving. A year ago when I spoke at Social Media Marketing World, I said influencer marketing is about community and not campaign. And I literally had the hundreds of people in the room repeat after me, because it's not a campaign. You're really trying to build a community. This year, I said, influencer marketing. I said social media should be about collaboration, not just marketing. And that's really this topic of influencer marketing, about collaborating with those around you. So, it sounds very esoterical. So, Neal, how do I get started doing this? So I mentioned content, right? Of, leveraging other people's content. But if you are, if you're creating content, if you have a content creation budget, whether it's for blog posts, whether it's for photos, whether it's for videos, wouldn't that money be better spent working with influencers, right? And when I say influencers, what I'm talking about is people that are talking about the subject that you want to talk about or that you're talking about. And therefore, they probably have a community of people that if you influence would become your customer. So this is where you begin, Neal, how do I find these people? Do searches. If I was an average Instagram user, an average LinkedIn user or Twitter user, how would I find people? I would start by doing searches, by hashtags, by users, what have you. One easy thing to do is really start with your own followers. And I mentioned this because we always want to begin with the people that we know the best. So we begin obviously with our employees, our partners, then we have sort of our customers, our fans. So if you have customers that have converted into fans in social media, these are perfect people to look for. Go through your followers, right? Go through your Twitter followers, your Instagram followers. You can't go through your followers one by one on every social network. But when people share your content, comment, look up these people. Are they potentially collaborators, influencers in their own community. And only after you exhaust these opportunities, I believe, should you go outside of that. Most companies begin by working with people that know nothing about them, and therefore it does become pay to play, because those influencers that are really popular are getting pinged by any and every brand that you can think of. So of course they charge money, because time is money. And there might be great ROI just from that spend, but it doesn't have to begin with money, because influencers are people, and everybody is in it for a different reason. Some people, you offer them free product, they'll work with you. Other people, you offer them an exclusive experience and they'll work with you. And it's not about using a tool. And I often get asked this, hey, is there a tool? No, the best tool you have is the human brain and your ability to analytically think and look at this person and their content and the engagement and try to figure out and then work with them on a one-to-one basis, right? It's a marriage, not a one-night stand. I'm not going to meet someone for the first time and say, let's go out for Greek, right? I'm going to ask them, hey, what do you want for dinner? And there's lots of different options, right? So, marketers like to find an easy way of sort of putting everything into a funnel. But in reality, it doesn't work that way when we're working with people. So this is the struggle. I see many marketers say, oh, great, I'm going to do influencer marketing. There used to be a tool called InkyBee. I don't know if they're in operation anymore. I went to their website recently, but there's a number of these different tools that are like these blogger outreach platforms. Basically, hey, we'll give you the email address of all these influencers, and then we'll give you some templates you can use. So, you're bombarding influencers with these cut and paste templates that aren't even personalized. And influencers see the same thing day in and day out. Why would they want to work with you?
And of course, the other side of that is if you're sending them out, how many other people are actually sending them out as well? And they're getting the same thing. So, they're not going to, and, I think that goes back to as well, if we look at I'm forever when I'm teaching, I would always talking about LinkedIn, and I'm saying, if people connect with you, look at who they're connected to as well. Like who are their other connections that you may be able to leverage them to speak to that particular person that you want to get to in their audience. And the same with that is when you're on LinkedIn, don't just send them a connection request. Send them a message. They're human. They want to talk to you, and it's polite as much as anything else. And I think when we look, as you say, at influencer marketing, it's going back to, using your own head and saying, okay, where do we go from here? I think that's a key point of what you're saying here.
Yeah, and if you've been in social media marketing for the past decade, you know that you have to pivot. So normally the pivots have been from social platform to social networking site, from LinkedIn to Google Plus and now back to LinkedIn, or from Facebook to Snapchat to Pinterest to Instagram. Then you've pivoted on content medium, from blog content to status updates to, funny memes to photos to live stream. What I'm saying now is just a completely different pivot. It's a pivot from organic reach that's declining to collaboration, right? And working with people on that basis. And I mean, obviously, and I've always said the same thing. LinkedIn is not about your first degree connections. It's about the second degree connections.
Yeah, totally.
First degree connections already know you, right? It's about reaching people that don't know you. And I think that's the challenge for most brands. So you need to get outside of your own community. And the only way to do that, obviously, is through paid, or I believe working with influencers. Not, if you're a person on LinkedIn, sure, you can connect with other people, but businesses cannot do that from their company page. Although recently, LinkedIn has added the ability for company page to engage with certain hashtags, but I'm sort of going beyond the subject. That's a subject for another podcast, I think. So just as you mentioned, whenever you have someone on a podcast, whenever you you interview someone or for a blog post or whatever it might be, you're always going to get more visibility. And that's really what it's about. So, start with collaborations, right? Content-centric collaborations, and really develop relationships and go from there. And I think that it's so beneficial in so many ways. And guess what? It's fun because you're working with people, right? Yeah. And you're getting to know people. That that are going to provide a great perspective, and it may actually help influence not just the way that you market your product, but even your product itself. They may be able to offer ideas that they know from their community or they know from working with other brands that can really benefit your company. So I know it requires a little bit of bravery at the beginning of reaching out to people. And it's funny, I had this conversation. Someone on LinkedIn saw an article where I was talking about, influence marketing, companies going straight out and having conversations with people. And he goes, "Are you recommending that we just directly reach out to social media users?" And I literally asked the gentleman, "How long have you been in social media marketing?" He says 2 years. I go, "Well, haven't you ever done this before?"
Yeah.
Social media is a two-way conversation, yet a lot of marketers have gotten into treating it as another medium of advertising, just like any other platform like digital. It's two-way, right? And when you reach out and begin those conversations in a non-spammy way, it really opens up your eyes, I believe, for the potential of social media as an incredible platform for collaboration.
Hugely. And I totally agree with you. Like, you look at even say Twitter and the way, people are talking on Twitter, and like I've often seen, posts that will come up that I don't know these people, but they'll come up in the news feed, and it'll be something that'll interest me, and I'll retweet it, and I might send a message with it, and then all of a sudden they come back and say, "Oh, thanks for sharing that." And that's when you start your conversation, which you start building out and start talking to these people, because, I've often had people like, okay, say for instance, and I know we're sort of talking a lot more about LinkedIn here, but I've often had people who've come and viewed my profile. They wouldn't connect with me, but I will actually reach out to them and say, "Oh, I seen you viewed my profile. Is there something that was of interest to you, or would you like to connect," or whatever it may be. And it starts off a conversation. And I think that's the key to it all, because the conversations then lead into, talking to people and then getting to know them, and then obviously then you start to look at the collaborations. And so it's a building block that you have to do, but I think it's so important. And what is social media? It's social, and we have to be that way, because I think, as you say, for so long now we've been just using it as another marketing tool. Okay, it is to a certain degree, but I think though we have really started to lose sight of exactly what social media actually can do for people.
Yeah, if you think about it, so, from an agency perspective, I'll just take one client example. My agency handles their Facebook page, their Twitter account, their LinkedIn company page. But because this is a B2B company, I said, if this is going to be successful, then we want to handle the LinkedIn profile of your CEO, who is not active on LinkedIn at all. So, well, guess where we get most of our leads from? It's not from the Facebook page or the Twitter profile or the LinkedIn company page. It's from the profile of the CEO. And guess how we get most of those leads? Not from sending emails, but from simple connection requests to relevant people in the industry with a relevant and personalized message. And that often will lead to this conversation that says, "Hey, I'd like to know more about your company," what have you. So this is because social media, like I said, was made for people. It's much easier for people to engage. And when you have a photo instead of an icon of a brand under your profile, it just becomes a lot easier to have that conversation. So, leverage that core component that, of human psychology and the benefit that social media provides for people, this unparalleled opportunity to search and find and engage with people, and create some sort of an influence marketing program to wrap around that to help you meet your marketing objectives.
And it's very funny when you're saying that. It's a coincidence there, because I'm actually working on a new program which I'm going to be called, it's the psychology behind social media. And like that, I go into that and I just you look at it and you say, and it's only when I started to delve into that more that I started to realize, oh my gosh, there's people are missing out on this. And it's so, we have to start thinking that way. And I think, as you say, even that simple photograph, because, if you go out and you go to a networking meeting, for instance, you're hardly going to go in with a paper bag over your head. People are going to see your page. So at the end of the day, it's so important that we actually do look and we actually start to take notice of ourselves online and offline as well, which then as you say, leads to people being influenced by us or by them. And, I've often had I've had a number of companies that have come to me and said, oh, I see you're very, very prominent on social media. Any chance of you promoting this? And I go, well, I need to know you before I can work with you, type of thing. So I understand the ethos of your company, of your brand, of what you're doing. And, can I add something to it, or are you just wasting time? And, 9 times out of 10, you will get people who will say, once you're honest with them and then you start to work with them, then they start to trust you and like you and all that other good stuff as well that comes along.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So hopefully this podcast has really opened up the eyes and ears and just given people a new way of thinking about leveraging social media for sales and marketing, begin that process. And obviously, hopefully people will reach out to us after this if they have any questions.
Sure do.
But yeah, I'm really excited about the potential. I've seen the potential. I've seen it work for companies. I'm currently, as we talked about before we started recording this podcast, writing a book called The Business of Influence, which is all about, how to leverage influencer marketing. I have dozens of case studies, and really, regardless of industry, there's tons of case studies out there of companies that have been successful doing this. So, and I think the beautiful thing is the lesser known you are, the more potential this has. So it's not just for the big brands like the Coca-Colas and the Cadburys. It's really for everyone. I hope that everybody that listens to this podcast will really challenge themselves to begin the process.
Brilliant stuff. And of course, when is the new book out? I'm looking forward to that. I was looking on the website there the other day, and I seen it that you can pre-order it as well. So I'm really interested to see when is that. When are you planning on releasing that, or publishing that, I should say, is probably the right word, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, yeah, as soon as my publisher gives me a release date, I'll be able to tell you. Unfortunately, I do not have that publishing date yet, so I assume it's going to be sometime in late 2019. I'm saying winter 2019. Hopefully before we publish this podcast, I'll have that date for you. But yeah, it's still several months away. The content and the manuscript is already done.
Brilliant.
But unfortunately, I am through podcasts like these and through blog posts, what have you, slowly, talking about some of the major concepts that are going to be part of the book.
Brilliant stuff. And Neal, before we finish up, I always ask my guest one simple question, and it's not related to the podcast. And the question is if you had the chance to invite someone to dinner, whether it be past or present, who would it be and why?
Well, I'm a big music fan, and I'm a big fan of Elvis Costello. So that would probably be the person, believe it or not. And, when I think about pivoting, and we've talked a lot about this concept of pivoting in social media marketing as social networks come and go, and as they become more visual and with the changing algorithms. Elvis Costello strikes me as someone with a very, very rich and varied musical career. He himself has pivoted, probably for different reasons, from many, many different genres of music. And always, when he decides to record blues or whatever type it is, he always has a way of collaborating with other musicians. So I think he has a fascinating history, a fascinating life. And I'd like to know more about what makes him tick, what keeps him going and pivoting in all these different music styles, and keeping creative and keeping his own brand. So I know that's probably the answer you never got me for, but and obviously he's a very witty songwriter in his lyrics. So just understanding how he as a content creator works as well, I think would be great to understand. And I'm sure he'd be a really funny person to be around as well over dinner. So yeah, there's my answer for you, Elvis Costello.
Elvis Costello. So from I suppose from Oliver's Army right up to Bart Bacharach as well. So it's
there you go.
It's
from the angry young man, right?
Yeah, from an angry, and I have to admit, I love the angry young man music. I have to admit, and we know that because we're of a certain vintage.
Indeed.
Neal, how can people reach out to you if they want to get in contact with you?
Well, I used to have a few different brands, and I decided that the best brand is really your name. So everything right now is under Neal Schaffer. So nealschaffer.com, Neal Schaffer on any social network you can think of, NealSchaffer. And feel free to reach out. Always here to answer questions, and I love meeting new people and accepting new challenges that businesses might have. So let's use this, just as we talked about today, yet let's use this as the beginning of a conversation and a relationship.
Brilliant stuff. Neal, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today on the podcast, and thanks for taking the time out to come and speak to us. And continued success, and I look forward to reading the new book when it is released in winter of this year.
Yeah, there's probably a Game of Thrones thing I could say here, but anyway. Yeah, it'll be there, and if you're looking to learn more about it, definitely check out my my website and my blog post on influencer marketing, and we'll begin with that.
Yeah, and we'll put all the links to the content in the show notes for this show. Neal, it has been an absolute pleasure. We shall talk to you soon, and continued success. And thanks for coming on the podcast today.
The pleasure's been mine. It's been a lot of fun, and look forward to many conversations like this with you and your community in the future.
Talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Right, cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So my thanks to Neal for coming on the podcast today and chatting with us all about influencer marketing, and hopefully you have a better understanding of what influencer marketing is now. And don't forget, if you do want to find out more information about Neal, you can log on to his website at nealschaffer.com, and you'll also find all of his social links there as well. So once again, as I said, thanks to Neal for coming on the podcast today and sharing with us some fantastic insights into influencer marketing. And if you'd like to listen to any of our previous podcasts, you can log on to our website at compassmedia.ie/podcasts. And all of the podcasts are also available on Mixcloud, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts as well. And we would be delighted if you would leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, as we are always thrilled to receive your feedback on any of the programs. You can also subscribe to the Social Media Talks podcast there, so you never miss an episode as well. And if you'd like the show notes for this episode or for any of the previous podcasts, you can log on to our website at compassmedia.ie/SM show notes. And if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, please do get in contact with me. All you have to do is email us at smtalks@compassmedia.ie. And if you want to find out more about the services that Compass Media provide, from social media marketing, training, and podcast services, please visit our website. And if you'd like to reach out and connect with me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, you can do so by just for searching Alan Hennessy or Compass Media. That's about all for today. We do hope you enjoyed the podcast today, and you'll join us again next week for another fantastic insight into social media marketing and digital marketing as well. I've been Alan Hennessy from Compass Media for the Social Media Talks podcast. I'll see you all again next week, and as I always say, be social. Until next week, bye-bye.
Social Media Talks podcast is a production from compassmedia.ie.